It took me a while to get over the Skoda Superb, but now with the VW Taigun GD Plus, I'm in a totally different car space. I'm Raspreet Gill and I'm about to break down some real facts with the VW Taigun right here. Now VW considers this car as a compact SUV, or a SUVW rather. But the fact that it's called the T-Cross in markets overseas, it kind of fits the billing to be considered a crossover. Now when you take a look at the side of the vehicle, you realize the tailgate is what lets the entire shape down. And that's one thing that could have done with a bit of curvature, pretty much similar to what's on the T-Roc. Because that car has the stature and it definitely looks a little bit more better than this one, from the rear end at least. Now at the back, we have this extremely elongated tail lamp which is fully LED. It's a very unique and catchy thing. Now the boot also notoriously contributes to the lack of road presence that the Taigun has. I mean, in a world where the Seltos and Creta are kings and queens, the Taigun really appears as a peasant on the road. I don't mind all this chrome treatment that garnishes the car, along with all of this rugged cladding that runs around it. We move down to a bit of a diffuser out here that leads us to a dual-tipped exhaust that's hidden underneath right there. Getting into the boot, what I got here was 385 liters of boot space. I thought it was enough until I put in stuff there and I realized it's pretty less. The fact that it even trails the competition big time, I would have much rather hoped I had more space than this. Getting inside the hatch down here, you got a somewhat space-saver spare wheel. It's got the similar dimensions except that this is a 16-incher and we've got 17s around this car. Let's get out of here. Now the front is where the Taigun really starts to win. The double LED headlamps at the front with this brow-shaped DRL that runs over it. The chromed elements in the grille out there with the GT badge that's sitting there too. It all adds to it. But to top it all off, when you step back and you take a good look, it'll actually remind you of that older Gen Tiguan that was once sold in the Indian markets. Now underneath the hood is where the party really gets started off for the Taigun, with this 4-cylinder 1.5 litre TSI Evo engine that makes 150 horsepower, 250 Newton meters of torque, experienced as early as 1600 RPM. And of course, it's been mated to a 7-speed DSG gearbox to help you drive with some good power. Now that we're inside the Taigun, let's talk about the materials that they've offered us. Up here on the dash, it's all hard to touch. The window panes are hard. The armrest along the window is the only thing that's soft. Remainder of it, it's all hard down in the footwells. Everything is hard touch, plastic material. Tacky, definitely. Speaking of the steering wheel, you do get a nice flat bottom. It's a nice light steering wheel with a bit of multi-function buttons on this side. You got your cruise control options here. Straight in there, I get a 8-inch driver's instrument cluster that's kind of weirdly cut in a rectangular shape. I don't know why would they just do that. I mean, the cost cutting is kind of ridiculous. It should have been just simply stretched across, would have looked way better. I've got a 10-inch touchscreen infotainment system out here. The touch response on it is rather decent. It's pretty responsive. You take a look at the Maps app out here, flicker it around. It's pretty responsive. It does the thing. Then we get into the home button out here. Swipe across, you get your car's details. Hold up. Yeah. Right across here, we get our car details as well. A little bit of a nice graphic of the Taigun. I like that stuff. We get into this, you can actually see the kind of, okay, this mileage is probably messed up right now, but whatever. You get your since refuel, long-term data, and the range information as well down there. Now, all of this red accent that you see that's running on this car, it's exclusive to this very color. So if you go in for the wild cherry red that I'm seated in, that's the only time you're going to get this red accentation across the interior. Now the door bins are astonishingly large. They can actually fit up to a 2-liter bottle without much struggle, and that's amazing. Now we also get Android Auto and Apple CarPlay in this car, which is wireless. That's a complete boon. We also pack in with 6 speakers for a sound system that sounds pretty decent. It doesn't pack in a woofer like the Kushaq does in this variant, but it still is good enough. It's got good bass, good mids, and as well as the treble kicks in pretty fine. Let's get down here. We got a wireless charging pad that is actually awful because it disconnects, it reconnects, and it's not up to the mark at all. I like the fact that we have a push start button out here and not along this side the way it's in the Kushaq. Then my air conditioning system, it's a single zone air conditioning system. And we've got this kind of a slider feather touch system to operate it. This is a complete negative because physical buttons, knobs are way better when it comes down to the air conditioning system. The display on it and stuff, it's alright, but imagine when you're driving and you've actually got to look down. If you want to direct the airflow, you again got to do this haptic touch stuff. It's not really haptic, but you get the point. It's not physically pressable. And here are 5 things that I absolutely despise about the VW Taigun. Starting off with these seats that I'm seated in. This actually has a seat cover running over it. They weren't even leatherette. We got fabric seats in the GT Plus variant. Moving on, the height adjustment. Only the driver's seat is height adjustable, manually of course. So I'm the only one around in the car at the front getting that SUV feeling sitting high above the road. But my passenger right here doesn't have that possible because he's got to sit down low and can only take a seat forward or backwards or recline it. Now, a panoramic sunroof is another thing that's missing out of this car, especially with all these tacky bolts and stuff that you can even see around this one. A panoramic sunroof would have just simply livened this cabin way more. Now, I did end up getting Goodyear tires along with some fancy looking 17-inch wheels, but the worst part about them is you don't get disc brakes at the rear. These are drum brakes and the discs lie only at the front. That's another messed up situation. Now, the driver's side visor doesn't even come with a vanity mirror. It's only on the passenger side, and that's kind of ridiculous as well. I'm in the back seat of the Taigun, the front seat's set in my position. I'm 5'10", and I've still got some fantastic leg room. The headroom as well would actually fit in up to a 6-footer, would be very comfortable. I've got great visibility all around, nice window panes to take a look out of, no real sense of any claustrophobia. Carrying 3 at the back though, it's a bit of a squeeze, but in the city it's doable, especially the fact that we don't have any major transmission tunnel flowing at the bottom out here. I've got a couple of AC vents at the back, a couple of USB Type-C charging ports down there as well. The people I've carried back in this car have always had a good time, especially with the suspension that the car rides on. It's pretty much a good place to be in. So we're moving off in the VW Taigun. Now, we don't have major drive modes or anything as such. We just have a normal drive mode. Then we have a sport mode that you got to flick it into. And then the car does an auto-sensing eco mode for you. Now, what that does is it actually deactivates a couple of the cylinders out of the Ford in order to improve your mileage, and you don't really realize it. But if you're just coasting along, which is what this car loves to do, coasting is one of its prime strengths, and it does that pretty well. Now, as we move along here, NVH levels is something that I like to talk about. The outside noise, road noise and stuff, alright, the road noise does creep in, I gotta give that. But other than that, besides the road noise, it's a very well insulated cabin. For the vehicles that are moving along or any other kind of stuff that's going around outside, you're separated from that world and you're in this space right here. Now, these bumps, they are felt, but for somebody like me coming from that sedan background, I think it's a massive big deal because I don't really need to worry as much as I would with a sedan. So now these bad patches that come along the road, the car kind of eats them up, or at least that's how I feel, given that sedan background that I've come through. Although you do feel these undulations inside the cabin at times, it still does a fairly good job, especially with that 188 millimeters of ground clearance, speed breakers or whatever, like, they're not touching the underbelly of this vehicle. So we're in the sport mode right now in the Taigun. When you floor it, can it tackle these corners that well? We've got to find out that. And it certainly can, but at the cost of some serious body roll as well. Got these paddles as well out here to play with, all the way up to the 5,000 RPM mark. And you get this pretty painful to hear engine noise in the cabin. You hear this? It's really disturbing for the passengers inside, the driver alike. Kind of ruins the driving experience on the overall. But the car, when you speak about the driving setup, The DSG just simply helps it floor off the line. And the 150 horsepower, you feel it, all of it coming right through. I think it's pretty adequately powered for the kind of size that it has. It's impressive, really impressive, except this refinement that the engine really needed, it seems as though it's missing. So the Volkswagen Taigun, to sum it up, you guys, someone like me would pick this car up just because of the way it drives. It gives you that sense of connection on the road, and I know it trails the competition big time, especially when it comes down to the features, the tech that's on offer. But this MQB platform right here, it has the potential, and Volkswagen could absolutely capitalize on it. Now, they've done a lot of brand image repairing as well when it comes down to the service aspect. I paid about 25,000 rupees for 4 years of a service package that covers absolutely everything. In fact, they even came to my doorstep within the first month of delivery to do a complete service checkup. And that's excellent because I would never really expect that from the Skoda Volkswagen Group in the past. So things are on the up, except this car with a bit of niggles. But obviously, with whatever's on offer here, despite the limitations, I think it's a great car. I'm Raspreet Gill, and if you do like this video, do drop a thumbs up. Subscribe to that channel as well, alright? If you haven't done already, it really would help. I'll see you all for the next one.